The arena buzzed with the chaotic energy of 1,000 hopeful heartbeats. Kids shouted, sneakers squeaked on the polished floor, and phone flashes popped like a field of digital fireflies. In the center of it all, Michael Jordan moved with the practiced grace of a man who had lived in the spotlight for decades. He signed another basketball, posed for another selfie with a star-struck teenager, and gave a quiet nod of approval to a young boy's jump shot. It was a smooth charity event for a local Chicago youth league. Few hours of his time, a few hundred autographs, a quick photo op before melting back into the privacy of his guarded life. The line was a testament to his legend, snaking around the court and into the echoing hallway. His staff were already whispering about cutting it short, their eyes on the clock. But Jordan remained a pillar of calm, a patient smile etched on his face as he worked his way down the line, a rhythm he could perform in his sleep. Until she stepped forward, not with the eager rush of the others, but with a quiet hesitation. A woman in her early 30s, her face etched with a weariness that her forced smile couldn't hide. Her coat was thin, the kind that offered more suggestion of warmth than actual protection against a Chicago winter. Beside her, a young boy of about 8 clutched a worn basketball, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and the shivering cold of the drafty arena. The boy, Leo, held the ball out with trembling hands. "Mr. Jordan, could you sign this?" Michael took the ball, his Sharpie hovering over the textured leather. "Of course, champ. What's your name?" "Leo," the boy whispered, his breath a small white puff in the air. As Jordan signed his name in a fluid, familiar script, he noticed the mother, Sarah, subtly rubbing her arms, her shoulders hunched. She leaned down to her son and murmured, her voice a low, private sound not meant for anyone else's ears. "I know, honey. It's cold." The words were simple, an observation, but they didn't land that way. They cut through the noise of the arena, through the squeak of sneakers and the pop of flashbulbs, and hit Michael with the force of something heavier than sound. He stopped. The pen in his hand froze mid-air. For a beat, the universe kept moving. Laughter, chatter, the bounce of a distant ball. Then, slowly, the noise seemed to dim as those closest to him sensed the shift in his posture. One of his security guards leaned in, his voice a low rumble. "You okay, Mike?" Jordan didn't answer. He didn't even seem to hear him. His eyes were fixed on the mother. He handed the ball back to Leo, his movements deliberate. "What did you say?" he asked her, his voice softer now, bending slightly as if to catch a fragile secret. Sarah's eyes widened, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "Oh, nothing. I'm so sorry. I was just talking to my son. The draft in here is—" she trailed off, gesturing vaguely at the large arena doors. But Michael's gaze was unwavering. He saw the way her fingers were red at the tips, the way her thin coat was pulled tight around her, as if to physically hold in what little warmth she possessed. He saw the truth behind the excuse. "No," he said, his voice gentle but firm, creating a small pocket of silence around the three of them. "That's not what you meant." Sarah looked down, her son's small hand finding hers. The apology in her eyes was profound. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jordan. We shouldn't have—" "Yes, you should have," he interrupted softly, his voice intended only for them. He knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to Leo's eye level. But his question was for Sarah. "Is it cold at home too?" A single tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She just nodded once, a confession that cost her every ounce of her pride. The arena, the line, the camera sit all faded away. All Michael could hear was the echo of that simple, devastating statement. "It's cold." He stood up, his face a mask of quiet resolve. The event was over. He turned to his assistant, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Find out where they live. I'm riding with them." "Sir, the schedule." "Now." The line was officially paused. The event staff looked at each other in panicked confusion. But Jordan was already walking off the court, Leo and Sarah trailing in his wake like they'd been pulled into the orbit of a sudden, compassionate star. He didn't wave goodbye. He didn't pose for one last photo. The cameras captured the moment, the towering icon walking away with the anonymous mother and child. But the man himself was silent. All he could feel was the biting chill of a truth he had almost missed. The black SUV moved through the west side streets like a shadow, its tinted windows hiding the world's most famous athlete sitting beside an 8-year-old boy in the back seat. Leo was silent, clutching his newly signed basketball as if it were a life raft. In the front passenger seat, Sarah gave quiet, polite directions. Her hands clenched so tightly in her lap, her knuckles were white. She was caught in a storm of humiliation and a terrifying, fragile hope. Michael said nothing, not because he was angry, but because he didn't trust his voice. For decades, he had commanded every stage he stood on, every court he played on. But this wasn't a stage. This was a raw, unscripted reality he hadn't expected to collide with so viscerally. The building was cracked brick and tired concrete, the kind of place where the graffiti seemed more permanent than the paint. "This is us," Sarah murmured, her voice thick with an apology for the life she hadn't chosen. Jordan stepped out of the vehicle first, his security guard moving to follow. Michael held up a hand. "Stay here. No cameras." He wanted no buffer, no entourage, just him and the quiet resolve that had settled deep in his chest. The hallway smelled of damp plaster and years of accumulated cooking odors. They walked up 3 flights of stairs, the concrete steps worn smooth in the middle. At their apartment door, Sarah fumbled with the key, her hands shaking. It's not much," she whispered, as if he might turn and leave. Michael just nodded. "Thank you for letting me see." She unlocked the door and pushed it open. The cold hit him first. It was a damp, biting chill that was somehow colder than the air outside. The apartment was meticulously clean but bare. A threadbare sofa was covered with a pile of blankets. A small kitchen table had only 2 chairs. There was no television. The silence was punctuated by the hum of an old refrigerator. With a deep, shaky breath, Sarah walked to the thermostat on the wall and pointed. "It's broken. The landlord said he'd fix it, but that was last month." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Michael walked further into the room, his eyes taking in every detail. He saw the towels stuffed under the single-pane window, a futile attempt to block the draft. He saw the small space heater in the corner, unplugged. "Does the heater work?" he asked gently. "It does," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. "But I can't run it. The electric bill. I had to choose between keeping the lights on and this. I have a second job, but I fell behind after Leo got sick last month." Michael stepped toward the kitchen counter and placed his phone down. "Can I borrow a pen?" Leo, who had been standing silently by the door, offered him one from his school backpack. Michael didn't write. He opened his notes app and began typing, his long fingers moving swiftly across the screen as he paced the small living room. "What school does Leo go to?" "Northwood Elementary." "Do they have a coat drive? Community outreach?" Sarah gave a short, humorless laugh. "They have a bake sale to buy printer paper. They're doing the best they can. We all are." He nodded slowly, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm not here to judge you," he said, his voice soft but clear. "I'm here to understand what's failing you." Her carefully constructed composure finally broke. "Everything," she wept, the word a raw, ragged sigh. "I'm doing my best. I swear I am." "I know you are," he said, his voice full of a sudden fierce gentleness. "That's the problem." He sent 3 messages from his phone without explanation, then looked at Sarah. "Are you and Leo free tomorrow?" She looked at him, confused. "I have my shift at the diner." "Cancel it," he said, not as a command, but as a plea. "Please, I want to show you something. I need your help." "My help?" she asked, incredulous. He walked toward the door. "First," he said, "we're going somewhere warm, and we're going to get you some dinner. Then, tomorrow, we'll talk about what comes next." As they stepped back into the cold hallway, Leo, emboldened by the kindness he had seen, reached out and took Michael's hand. The gesture was small, impulsive, and full of trust. Michael looked down, surprised. Then his large hand gently enveloped the boy's small one. Sarah watched them, a single, silent thought repeating in her mind. "He heard me. He actually heard me. The place wasn't fancy. It was a small, family-owned Italian restaurant tucked away on a side street, the kind of spot Michael used to frequent in his rookie years. It was warm inside, smelling of garlic and baking bread. They sat in a quiet booth in the back, shielded from the few other patrons. The owner, a round man named Sal, recognized Michael, gave a wide, knowing smile, and simply said, "The usual, Mike?" "Bring us 3, Michael replied, "and some hot chocolate for the young man." Leo sat across from him, sipping the steaming drink with both hands, his eyes finally shining with childhood excitement instead of awe. Sarah sat beside him, the warmth of the restaurant slowly unclenching the tight knot of anxiety in her stomach. "Order anything you want," Michael said, sliding a menu toward her. She just shook her head, overwhelmed. "The lasagna here," he said, making the decision for her. "Trust me." When the food arrived, steaming plates of lasagna piled high with cheese, Leo dug in with gusto. Sarah ate slowly, deliberately, as if savoring not just the food, but the moment of peace. Michael watched them, not with pity, but with a focused intensity. "Tell me about the landlord," he said. "Mr. Henderson?" Sarah shrugged. "He owns half the buildings on our block. He's not a bad man, just overwhelmed. He says the buildings are too old, the heating systems need a full replacement, and he doesn't have the money." "And the utility company?" "They send the notices," she said simply. "Red letters. You get 3 before they shut it off. We're on our 2nd. He listened, absorbing the details. Another mental snapshot for the plan that was rapidly forming in his mind. "Do you know about the Jordan Impact Foundation?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "Of course. You build basketball courts, give scholarships." "We do," he said. "But maybe we've been building the wrong things. Or maybe we've been building them in the wrong order. You can't dream about a scholarship if you're too cold to study. You can't practice your jump shot if you're worried your pipes are going to freeze." He leaned forward. "I'm designing something new here in Chicago, a different kind of initiative. And I need people who understand the problem from the inside, people who aren't afraid to tell the truth." Sarah looked across the table at him, her gaze steady for the first time. "Why us, Mr. Jordan? There are thousands of families like us." He leaned back, a faint smile touching his lips. "Because you didn't ask for anything. You didn't hold up a sign or shout for attention. You just whispered the truth to your son. And sometimes, a whisper is louder than a roar." His phone buzzed. A text from his foundation's COO. "Ready when you are." Another from his personal attorney. "Initial research complete. Call me." A third from a contact at a major HVAC company. "I'll take your call tonight." He pocketed the phone. "Would you be willing to meet with me and my team tomorrow?" he asked Sarah. "Just to talk, to tell them what you told me." She hesitated, then looked at her son, who was now happily drawing on a napkin with a crayon Sal had given him. He was warm, he was full, he was smiling. She nodded slowly. "Okay." The knock came at 8:15 a.m. Sarah opened the door, her heart pounding, expecting to see a black SUV. Instead, she saw 2 men in navy blue work uniforms holding toolboxes. "Ma'am, we're from GR Heating and Cooling," the older one said, holding up a work order. "We're here to do a full system replacement, compliments of the Jordan Foundation." Sarah was too stunned to speak. She just stepped aside and let them in. They were polite, efficient, and within minutes, the sounds of work began to echo through the small apartment. A moment later, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Sarah, it's Michael. I hope the technicians arrived okay." They're here," she stammered, watching as they laid out protective cloths on her floor. "I don't understand." "I do my best work when I'm warm," he said. "Figured you and Leo were the same. A car will be there in 30 minutes to bring you both to my foundation's office. We're going to have a strategy session." He paused, then added, "And Sarah, don't thank me. This isn't a gift. It's an investment." When she and Leo walked into the boardroom at the Jordan Impact Foundation an hour later, the room fell silent. 12 staff members, program directors, lawyers, communications leads, Analysts sat around a massive conference table. They all stood as she entered. Michael was at the head of the table, and he pulled out the chair right next to him for her. He didn't start with a speech. He started with a question, directed at her. "Sarah, tell them about the red letters." Hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, she told her story. She spoke of the broken thermostat, the drafty windows, the choice between heat and light. She spoke of the shame and the silence of bundling her son in 3 layers of clothing just to sleep. The room was silent, the only sound her quiet, steady voice and the scratching of pens on notepads. When she finished, Michael turned to his team. His voice was low, but it vibrated with an intensity that made the air crackle. "Her name is Sarah. Her son is Leo. They live 12 miles from here. And last night, they were cold. Not because they did something wrong, but because we of us have been building systems that are broken." He flipped open a folder. "I had our team run the numbers last night. There are over 50 households in this city, with children that are currently on a utility shut-off warning list. Winter is 3 weeks away." He let the fact hang in the air. A communications director cleared his throat. "We could draft a press release, announce a partnership with the city." Michael cut him off, not with anger, but with chilling finality. "This isn't PR. This is a rescue mission. We're not issuing a press release. We're starting a war on cold." He turned to Andre, his head of logistics. "I want a citywide coat and blanket drive. I want it operational in 72 hours. Partner with every church, every community center, every fire station that will have us." He looked at his legal counsel. "I want you to get the landlord of Sarah's building on the phone. His name is Henderson. You will tell him that the Jordan Foundation is offering to replace the heating and insulation for his entire building, for free. The only condition is that he freezes rents for all his tenants for the next 2 years. Finally, he looked at Lisa, his program director. "This is the big one," he said. "I want to create a new fund. Let's call it the Hearth Fund. Its sole purpose will be to pay the overdue heating bills for families with children in Chicago. No applications, no red tape. We will work directly with utility companies. We find the families on the warning lists, and we pay the bills, quietly, anonymously." Lisa's eyes were wide. "Michael, the scale of that, it would cost millions. It would outpace our entire annual budget." He didn't flinch. "Then find more," he said. "Call every person who has ever sat courtside at a Bulls game. Every CEO who asked for a photo with me at a gala. Every athlete who said they wanted to make a difference. You tell them I'm calling in a favor. Not for me, for Sarah, for Leo." "And if they say no?" Andre asked quietly. Michael looked around the table, his gaze landing on each and every one of them. "Then I'll pay for it myself." He stood up. "We start today. If a mother has to whisper to her own son that she's cold, then we have to be loud enough for the whole world to hear the answer." Then he walked out, leaving a room of stunned professionals scrambling to build an army. The community center at Northwood Elementary had never been so full on a Saturday. Volunteers in Jordan Foundation t-shirts scurried about, organizing tables piled high with brand new winter coats, thick blankets, hats, and gloves. Outside, a line of families stretched around the block, not with the frenetic energy of a celebrity event, but with a quiet, hopeful dignity. Sarah stood behind one of the tables, a volunteer lanyard around her neck. Her own apartment was now a cocoon of warmth, the new system humming quietly. But she wasn't just a recipient anymore. Michael had insisted she be a paid consultant for the new initiative, her lived experience more valuable than any degree. Today, she was helping other mothers find the right size coat for their children, her smile genuine and full of a light that had been missing for years. On the other side of the room, behind a mountain of cardboard boxes, Michael Jordan was working, out of sight of the main crowd. He wasn't signing autographs or posing for photos. He was breaking down boxes, his 6'6" frame folded in concentration, sweat beading on his brow. He wanted the focus to be on the work, not on him. Leo, wearing a bright new blue parka, was acting as a self-appointed greeter, handing out cups of hot chocolate to people as they came through the door. A local news van pulled up, a reporter jumping out with a microphone, but foundation staff politely intercepted them. "This is a private community event," they said. "No press." Around noon, Sarah was helping a young mother fit a snowsuit on a toddler when she looked up and saw Mr. Henderson, her landlord, standing awkwardly by the entrance. He saw her and walked over, holding a crumpled hat in his hands. "Sarah," he said, his voice gruff, I just wanted to say that your lawyers, or his lawyers, they called. I signed the papers." He looked around the bustling room. "What you're doing here, what he's doing, it's a good thing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a check. "It's not much," he said, handing it to her. "But it's for that Hearth fund. There's a woman in 4B, a single grandma. Her heat is out too." Sarah took the check, her eyes filling with tears. It was for $200. It was probably more than he could afford. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," she said. "Thank you." Later, as the event was winding down, Michael finally emerged from the back room. He saw Sarah talking with her landlord, and he smiled. He walked over to where Leo was diligently wiping up a small spill. "You're doing a great job, Chief," he said, ruffling the boy's hair. Leo beamed. "It's warm in here," he said. A simple, profound observation. "Yeah, it is," Michael replied, looking around the room at the dozens of families now bundled in new winter gear, their faces full of relief. "Yeah, it is." He caught Sarah's eye from across the room. She gave him a small, tearful smile. He didn't need a trophy. He didn't need a headline. This feeling, the quiet, powerful warmth of a community taking care of its own, was the championship. But the headlines came anyway. Someone with a cell phone had snapped a blurry picture of Michael breaking down boxes and sent it to a local news blog. From there, it exploded. Michael Jordan's secret war on cold. The story of the anonymous Hearth fund leaked. The tale of the full building heating replacement became a local legend. His phone blew up. His agent, his publicist, brand partners, all asking the same question. "Why didn't you tell us? We could have controlled the narrative." Michael sat in his office, ignoring the calls, looking at a single photo his assistant had taken at the coat drive, a picture of Sarah laughing as she helped a little girl try on a pink hat. That evening, he accepted a last-minute request to appear on a national news program. He walked onto the set not in an expensive suit, but in a simple gray sweater. "This isn't about me," he said, cutting off the host's effusive introduction. "This is about a conversation I overheard between a mother and her son. It's about the shame that forces people to be cold in silence." He looked directly into the camera, his gaze piercing. "We have the resources in this country to ensure that no child sleeps in a cold room. We have the wealth. We lack the will. So I'm issuing a challenge to every athlete, every CEO, every celebrity with a platform. Adopt a block. Pick one city block in a cold city and make sure no one's heat gets turned off this winter. Don't issue a press release. Just do it." The next morning, the dam broke. A tech billionaire from Silicon Valley called, pledging to cover every overdue utility bill in Detroit for the entire winter. A team of NFL players from Green Bay pooled their money and adopted 3 neighborhoods. The movement started to build, a quiet groundswell of action over talk. A week later, a simple, unmarked envelope arrived at Sarah's apartment. Inside was a single piece of paper with a handwritten note. "You started a fire. Now watch it spread." There was no signature, but she knew. She folded the letter, placed it in a small box where she kept her most precious things, and felt the warmth of it spread through her entire being. On the coldest day of the year, with a wind whipping off Lake Michigan and the temperature plunging into the single digits, a fleet of yellow school buses pulled up in front of Sarah and Leo's building. But they weren't going to school. "Where are we going?" Leo asked, his breath fogging the bus window. "It's a surprise," Sarah said, her own heart thrumming with a nervous excitement she hadn't felt in years. The buses drove to a part of the neighborhood that had long been forgotten, a street of shuttered warehouses and abandoned lots. But one building gleamed under the gray winter sky. It was an old brick community center that had been condemned for years. Now it had new windows, a new roof, and a large, simple sign over the door carved from warm, inviting wood. The Hearth. The bus doors opened, and they stepped out into the biting cold. As they approached the entrance, the doors swung open, and a wave of warmth and sound washed over them. Surprise! The inside was filled with hundreds of people, families from the neighborhood, volunteers from the foundation, Mr. Henderson and other tenants from their building. In the center of the room, standing beside a fireplace roaring with a cheerful blaze, was Michael Jordan, a wide grin on his face. The building had been completely transformed. It was a warmth hub, a place where anyone in the community could come during the day to escape the cold. There were comfortable chairs, a library of donated books, a small kitchen serving hot soup and coffee, and a resource center where staff helped people with utility assistance applications and job searches. But it was the mural on the main wall that made Sarah stop in her tracks. It was a beautiful, sprawling painting. It depicted a mother holding her child, wrapping a massive, warm blanket around an entire city block of houses. The mother's face was soft, determined. It was her face. Above the mural, in elegant script, were the words, "Sometimes a whisper is louder than a roar. Sarah J." Tears streamed down her face as Leo tugged on her hand. "Mom, that's you. You're on the wall." Michael walked over and stood beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You earned this, Sarah," he said softly. "You spoke for everyone who couldn't. This is the echo of your voice." He knelt down to Leo. "What do you think, champ? Pretty good for a community center, huh?" Leo just stared at the fireplace, mesmerized. "It's the warmest place in the whole world," he whispered. Later, after the cake had been cut and the hot chocolate had been drunk, Michael pulled Sarah aside. "This is just the beginning," he said. "We're opening 2 more of these, one in Minneapolis, one in Buffalo, and you're going to run the program if you want the job." She looked at him, speechless. Director of the Hearth Initiative. A salary, benefits, a chance to spend her life making sure no other mother had to feel the cold, silent shame she had known. When she finally found her voice, all she could say was, "Thank you for hearing me." He smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Always." Months later, Michael stood at a podium in a brightly lit convention hall, accepting an award for philanthropy. The crowd of wealthy donors and civic leaders gave him a standing ovation. He let the applause die down, then tapped the microphone. "I'm not the one who deserves this," he said, his voice filling the silent room. He pulled a folded photo from his jacket pocket. A screen behind him flickered on, showing the same image, the mural from the Hearth, of Sarah wrapping her city in warmth. "6 months ago," he said, "I met a mother who was cold. She didn't ask me for money. She didn't ask me for a photo. She just told the truth, and that truth changed me. It reminded me that greatness isn't measured in championship rings or shoe deals. It's measured in the warmth you can bring to a cold world." He looked out at the sea of faces. "I didn't save her. She saved me. She saved all of us who had forgotten how to listen." The crowd stood as one, the applause thunderous and heartfelt. But Michael wasn't looking at them. He was looking at the image of the woman on the wall, the quiet hero who started a fire with a single whisper. And for the first time in front of a global audience, the greatest of all time had tears in his eyes.